Hi, this is Bob Wells here, and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. This is the show where we hear about people's interests and uncover some fascinating stories at the same time. I hope you enjoy today's show. In today's show, I am joined by authors Heide Goody and Iain Grant. Heide and Iain have co-written the Clovenhoof series of books, the first book of which I've just finished. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and it can be described as a mixture of, I would say, contemporary fantasy, satire and comedy. One of those books, in fact, you find yourself laughing out loud while others question your sanity. Hello and welcome to the show, Heide and Iain.
Thank you.
Hi
there.
So this is a first for our show here because we've got three people on the show. We don't normally have three, it's normally two.
Delicate balancing act.
Very much so. So thank you both for coming on to the show. It's great to have you both on. How have things been?
Well, we've kept busy. We've been very busy, in fact. So, lockdown or no lockdown, the writing still happens.
It does.
Excellent stuff.
It does.
Yeah, good. So before we talk about your career, both your careers as authors, could you just tell us a little bit about yourselves and your journey and what you did before and how you became authors? And, I don't know who wants to go first.
Heidi always tells this story, I think. She remembers it better than me.
Okay.
So, Heidi.
Well, personally, my writing journey started way back when. I feel like I've always written things. But then, as so many women will understand, and some men too, that the family thing gets in the way and can crimp your style for quite a while. So I didn't really start taking it as seriously as I should have done until the early 2000s, perhaps.
Yeah.
And I joined in 2010, I'm fairly sure it was 2010, Birmingham Writers Group, which is just a fantastic writers group, actually.
And you both live in Birmingham?
Well, I live outside of Birmingham. Iain lives in
South
Birmingham.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we met there. So aside from being a great development opportunity for me, the writers group was really important to me. It's where I met Iain as well. So, I'm sure Iain has his own story.
Well, so, like everyone who, is a writer, you always start off doing something else first. Obviously, we have proper jobs, writers do, and writing often happens on the side. So much of my life I've either worked in IT or later on became a school teacher. And it was whilst working as a school teacher in Birmingham that I too joined the Birmingham Writers Group. I mean, I think I've been like every child in the country has at some point said, I am going to write a book, and then they'll draw a pretty cover and they'll start writing on the inside. So everyone started a novel at some point. But it's one of those hobbies that I've always come back to time and again. And again, it would probably be in the late 90s, early 2000s that I started, trying to take it seriously. I genuinely have lost count of the number of novels I've part or, completely written that are entirely unpublishable. But in, 2010, 2011, met Heidi at Birmingham Writers Group, a place where we go and we share writing and get criticism and feedback, and a great bunch of people. And we did a workshop on collaborative writing, on writing together with other people. And we looked at sharing ideas and we wrote some things together. But it was a fun exercise. I think most of us thought nothing further of it. But then either a few days later or maybe a week later, you emailed me, didn't you, Heidi?
Well, I can remember that the person that ran the workshop said at the end, who here wants to go ahead and do some collaborative writing? And I can remember the two of us practically bouncing in our seats and nobody else was. Yeah. So, yes, I emailed Iain and I said, do you want to write something together? And it was actually quite a difficult email to write because the fear of rejection was quite strong. I always think that Iain is a better writer than me. I did then and I do now, and so I had that imposter syndrome thing going on, and the fear of him saying no was it was very high in my mind. Yeah. So it was.
So collaborative writing. You're obviously writing together. How does that work?
We get asked that question so much, and obviously, number one, we don't sit side by side at a keyboard typing. individual letters each. It's probably this is the point where we point out that although Heide and I are married, we're not married to each other. So we do live and work in our own separate houses. As for collaborative writing, we've tried a number of different ways, haven't we, Heide?
Yes, I don't think there's a single way we haven't tried, actually. The one that we started off with, and we do quite often go back to this, is where we plot and write in chapters. And the way that we will do it is we will work out what's going to be in a chapter, and we do that working together with a piece of paper quite often, or actually we can do it remotely now that COVID has made things difficult.
So you'll just talk to each other about ideas?
Yeah, so we capture the ideas for a number of chapters perhaps, but then one of us will go away and write the synopsis for that chapter, then give it to the other one to write, and then we swap back again for editing. So when we do that, we can obviously work on 2 chapters at a time, and romp through a book that way.
Yeah. Although it's interesting with something like Clovenhoof, for example. So I think there's 12 chapters in that book, and we each wrote 6 of them. But I genuinely would have to say now I don't know which of us wrote which ones.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Things do blend and merge to a degree.
Yeah, I have to say, having read the book and thoroughly enjoyed it, it wasn't evident that each chapter was written by somebody different, and I guess why would it be?
Yes.
I didn't want it to be like that. It was just it flowed as a book, but I just like the way there were different sort of subjects coming through, different ways of telling things, the humour, the satire. I thought it was really good. Because
that book Clovenhoof, in which Satan loses his job and has to move to Birmingham in England. It was a starting point for us, and in terms of its themes, certainly reviewers have pointed out, kindly or unkindly, its vague similarity to, say, Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. And which was not the intention, but it's nice if people think that we come close to writing what they've written. But obviously, with a book like Good Omens, Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, they each took a separate set of characters. And so I think it would be Terry who wrote most of the chapters involving the children. And then Neil would take a bunch of other characters and he would write those strands. So they'd be writing separate parallel stories, whereas we've not necessarily gone for that model at all.
Yeah. So for listeners who would like to find out a bit more about Clovenhoof, can you just give us a very brief summary of what the book's about?
Clovenhoof is Satan. He's made redundant from hell and sent to live in the Midlands, in a suburban, deliberately suburban place. We chose Sutton Coldfield, which, if you are local to the Midlands, you'll recognise as being the slightly posh end of Birmingham. In fact, it doesn't like to be associated. The main reason that we chose Sutton Coldfield initially is because it's halfway between our houses. So it seemed like a good choice, but actually it plays well into the some of the popular myths that exist in the Midlands.
Yeah. So we put our main character Satan Clovenhoof. He ends up in a house share with Ben, who runs a local bookshop, and Neris, who works at a job agency. She's something of a man-eating go-getter kind of character, and those 3 characters, Clovenhoof, Ben, and Neris, the book and the books that follow, of which there's now I think 9 or 10, principally follows them and their adventures, usually with Clovenhoof's long-suffering human neighbours having to put up with his japes and antics, really.
I must admit, I started feeling. I say I've only read the first book, but I did actually start feeling a little bit sorry for him.
For Clovenhoof?
Yeah. Was that intentional?
I think there's this element within comedy fiction, this kind of fish out of water story, which is exactly what this is. It's Satan being dumped in suburbia and having to deal with, I suppose, the foolishness and silliness of our very petty everyday lives. And he is a has-been. He was once the almighty Prince of Darkness, and now essentially he's an unwilling retiree living the quiet life in a quiet corner of the city. And I think that is part of our attraction to him as a character, is the idea that he can look at the world around us with a very critical eye, and very judgmental eye, and just despair at our silliness as a society.
He's turned into something of an anti-hero as we've taken him through some of the other books. And we've actually got a Facebook group, and some of the people on the Facebook group have designed T-shirts saying, "What would Clovenhoof do?" And
oh, really?
Yes, which is just marvellous.
That sounds great. The other thing I liked was Heaven, where it had become very corporate with mission statements and things like that. I found that whose idea was that?
Oh, that's a good question. Because with Clovenhoof, and it's a kind of thing we like to come back to in several of our books, there's a lot of office-based, bureaucratic-based kind of scenes and humour. And there's a scene in Clovenhoof where Clovenhoof has his performance management review, his appraisal, in which he's failed to meet all of his targets, basically, and he gets told off for not doing his job, even though he feels, he's tried really hard. And I seem to recall that all of my colleagues, teachers who had read the book, you wrote that, Iain, didn't you? You can tell that's a teacher writing that. And I think all of Heide's colleagues, working in a more corporate environment, thought she had written it. And actually having fun with the silliness and the pettiness and the bureaucracy of the corporate environment, the workplace and the rules and the culture of it, is something we both very much enjoy.
No, I thought it worked really well. So you've done the Clovenhoof books together, and I guess you're still going to continue doing that?
Yes, we've been back to Clovenhoof and his friends for, I think, 9 novels.
And 9 novels, yeah.
9 novels and 2 series of novellas now. The most recent set of novellas, we felt we had to write these. They just had to happen because when we went into the first lockdown, because our anti-hero Clovenhoof, he's such a good way to explore what's going on in the world. We just needed to give the world the what would Clovenhoof do. So we've written a series of novellas called the Isolation Chronicles, and the proceeds from all of those have gone to the food bank, the Trussell Trust. So we've raised quite a lot of money now, I think.
Oh,
for
that's
the
marvellous stuff.
Yeah.
And sorry, what trust was that?
The Trussell Trust. They run food
Trust.
banks.
Yeah, across the country. So we've been very pleased that our readers have raised, and the readers have themselves raised several £1,000s for the Trussell Trust. That's been really wonderful. And I think in this kind of situation where people are stockpiling toilet paper, or trying to bend the rules, or all those different things, there's always ample room for human entertainment. Because of course we're in, without being bleak, we're in quite difficult and trying times, and diseases themselves and pandemics are not funny. But how we behave in times of adversity, I think that's been a very rich theme of humour and very enjoyable.
Oh, that's fantastic. And these books are still for sale, and the proceeds are still going to the food bank?
Yes.
Correct. The Isolation Chronicles, yeah.
Well, what I'll do, I'll put all that on the show notes. So if there's any listeners out there that fancy buying some of these books, they can do, and they know that the money's going to go to a good cause. So as well as your working together, you both work as separate authors as well, don't you?
Not recently. It feels like we're part of a brand now. We've even reworked some of our older material, our solo material, to fit the Heide and Iain brand, because it's working well for us.
Yeah. And we do are inspired to do our own writing, and we do enjoy doing our own writing. And yet, our readers very much enjoy whatever it is that, happens together, however it works, being the greater than the sum of its parts. We do find that we each get to lead the way sometimes. So, sometimes each of us go. So, for instance, actually, I think it was 2 years ago, both of us, this isn't the normal way writers work, but both of us were inspired to write novels based on dreams. I had a dream in which Christmas elves evil Christmas elves invaded my bedroom. And I recall Heidi had a dream in which people were selling off parts of their brain, not the physical brain, but the thinking space, to companies. And we both ended up writing novels based on those dreams. I saw the Candy Canes and Buckets of Blood, which was an evil elf horror comedy, and Japelink, based on Heidi's dream. We seem to have completely lost you, Bob.
Well, I'm interested in how you can subcontract out your parts of your brain for other people to use. I think that's a fascinating concept.
Yeah, it's a science fiction novel. Comedy science fiction. You'll have noticed that all of our novels are comedy, but we've written across various genres. But the idea that we wanted to explore there, and it doesn't seem as though it would be this far in the future, where if you imagine that brain implants are likely to become a real thing, it's certainly things are headed in that way. That we might collectively become part of a processing effort in the world. So that's where we started, and obviously we took it in the direction of a giant corporation that would do really bad things with our brains. But somebody slips through the net, wakes up to recover her full brain capacity, and the story kicks off there.
And I think one of the things that does interest us, is social media and how we respond to information in the world around us. Heidi and I, we use Facebook. We both are on Twitter. We use social media. But obviously, we're all aware that this information that we're sharing with social media companies is being used in a variety of ways. And I do think that Japelink starts to address some of those questions of what happens if you give tech giants control over your time, your attention, even your thoughts. We enjoyed that one very much.
Yeah. Now, you've already mentioned Terry Pratchett. What authors do you like to read?
Yes, Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. Obviously, we kind of started there. Both of us enjoy those authors. I do seek out comedy wherever I can find comedy novels. I always try them out, because I love those things. I particularly love the Florida crime novels of Carl Hiaasen and all of the people that came after him. Tim Dorsey, and there's just loads of them. So we've had an eye on that for a while, and we do plan to emulate those with some future books.
Absolutely, and I think because obviously as writers, it's nice to read outside your own genre. I enjoy crime fiction as well. Love reading the Anne Cleeves books. And there are certain writers who come along that you just love to read their writing. I happen to like very much the literary author Ian McEwan, who my wife detests utterly, his writing. Not him, his writing. So I'll be reading an Ian McEwan book and she'll say, "What's happening in this book?" And I'll say, "Nothing. Nothing has happened for 200 pages, but it's really good." It's very enjoyable. Just the flow of the writing is just fantastic.
Yeah. So, do you think going forward you'll continue writing with comedy, or have you thought about writing on any other?
I love comedy. It's perhaps this might be worth where we talk about the different things that we bring to our writing, because people are quite often surprised at the fact that I tend to bring the slapstick stupidness. If anybody in our partnership writes like a prepubescent boy, it's me. Whereas Iain is the one who brings the cleverness, the slight geekiness. He likes to wrap things up and make them super clever and reference things at the beginning and make everything beautifully plotted. Whereas I like a chaotic romp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all the sort of religious stuff that is researched for the Clovenhoof, that's all done by you, is it, Iain?
My day job for much of my career has been an RE teacher. So teaching about religion to secondary school children, and which is a fantastic thing to do, discussing the big questions, the whys and the wherefore. And I do love. I love philosophical questions, but I love the weird idiosyncrasies about religion. And, obviously the rich history, mostly of Christian tradition. I was discussing the other day with a student, St. Nicholas, Father Christmas, Santa Claus.
Yeah.
And we were discussing how do we get from this saint to the present day. And we came across one of St. Nicholas's most famous miracles, in which an evil butcher had killed 3 boys, chopped them up, and put them in a barrel where he was going to sell them as ham. St. Nicholas comes along, and I remember reading this it was a Wikipedia article, resurrects the pickled boys and brings them back to life. And it's just, it's almost I'm not going to knock anyone's Christian faith by saying this, but it's just a crazy story all by itself. It's a fantastically illogical and unbelievable thing. And I think there's this such a rich and varied and sometimes wild and outlandish history that goes with religion that I think I love sharing that. I love putting that in the books as well. So a lot of that comes from me, not all of it, but yes, a lot does.
Yeah. And what do your pupils think of your books?
I try not to tell them I'm a writer. There's some rude words in the books, and I don't want young people to go out and buy these books and then point and go, "Did you write this rude word, sir?" So we anyone asks me, we do discuss it that I do write, but I do try and keep both those things separate.
Yeah. Do you have any interest from on TV or films or anything like that?
We have, in the past, we sold the option for Clovenhoof to a Hollywood production company.
Yeah.
Sadly, they bought the option. They kept the option for a year, or was it 2 years?
Yeah.
And then it came back to us. So no, they had the vision, but they failed to get the back in and the follow through. So
if we were being cynical, we would say that was around about the time when the TV series Lucifer came out.
Yes.
And you might argue that a panic had gone around Hollywood, and everyone had kind of gone, we must make TV programs about the devil. We had a lot of fun discussing the potential Clovenhoof TV series with people. Yeah. I always remember we were chatting. I can't remember whether it was with the producer or our agent at the time, and they said, I think it was the American producer, and she said, who do you see in this role? And we went, well, we've always, this was a few years back, we fancied Gary Oldman in the role. He's got that kind of, debauched rock and roll star kind of thing going on, Gary Oldman. And we went, yeah, all right, fine. Conversation went away. And then a few weeks later, someone comes back to us and kind of go, how much of this, is Gary Oldman being in this a deal breaker for you? It'd gone from Gary Oldman being our dream cast member to somebody somewhere thinking that we weren't going to do it unless Gary Oldman appeared in it. I'm fairly certain that Gary Oldman had never heard of us at all, never seen the script or anything like that. But, it's kind of like the rumor mill that goes round sort of thing.
It just occurred to me, actually, in the days of commuting pre-March, pre-COVID, I used to have to do an hour and a half journey each way to Coventry, believe it or not. And I used to listen to, on the way back sometimes, to the BBC Radio 4 comedy programmes about 6:30. I would have thought Clovenhoof would be an ideal one for that, as a sort of play.
It's interesting because I suppose one of our touchstones that we were aware of was Old Harry's Game, the Andy Hamilton sitcom, in which he is Satan in hell. And I think obviously there's not been any new episodes for quite a long time of that, but at the time found it very funny, very enjoyable, and he was a very good Satan. And yes, Clovenhoof, the radio comedy, is something as an idea that has appealed to us, definitely.
Yeah, I think it will work very well. Now, going just for listeners who are writers, and we get quite a few that are writers or authors, on your writing process, how long does it take you both to write a book?
We can write a book in 4 months. We don't always start and finish a book in 4 months because we tend to have several projects on the go at once.
Yeah.
But yes, if we do the alternating chapter thing that we described earlier, then 4 months is quite doable.
In terms of actually writing, I guess, it'll be different for both of you. So probably both of you would say on this. But what does your day look like when you're writing? Do you write every day? Do you write a number of hours? How does it work?
Because that's quite different, I think, for both of us. I'm a get up early, sit down and write for a couple of hours before going to work, or whether I'm working on a certain day or not. Get up, sit down and write for a couple of hours, and I usually aim to write about 1,000 words a day. Obviously, it's 1,000 words that won't necessarily end up in the book, but it may be 1,000 words a day. Well, you're quite different, aren't you, Heidi?
Yes, so I now have 2 days a week which are dedicated writing days. So on Mondays and Fridays, that's my writing day, and everything else has to take a back seat. So I'll do most of my words in those days. The other days of the week, because there are lots of other activities that we haven't mentioned that we're independently published. So there are plenty of other things to do when you're independently published. So other days of the week is quite often when I'll tidy up some of those admin tasks or do other things that we need to do.
Yeah. And any listeners that aren't currently writing, what would you suggest to them if they wanted to become an author? What advice would you give them?
I think the writers group was a game changer for me. Absolutely. The amount of feedback, the support, and just the shift in mental attitude that comes with finding your peers.
Yeah.
So wherever you find them, a writers group was where we found them. But since then, an expanded network of writers on the internet, at conferences. We love going to conventions.
Yeah. I think, for writers, the number one thing, I mean, the advice that I would offer is the advice you get from lots of people, which is, first of all, write. Just keep writing. Always be writing. Always be doing something, always creating something, reading and writing. I think the other thing that perhaps people are less aware of is a bit like you're saying about the writers groups there and conventions, is share your work, let other people read your work. Discuss your work with other people. Writers, we feel like we're a very solitary profession, that we're very alone, but actually, really, to be effective writers, you have to be quite a social creature and share your ideas and so on. I think, I don't know about you, Heidi, but I think when I first started writing, I was quite protective of the things I wrote. I wrote them. This is my idea. It's special to me. No, you can't look at it because you might steal it. And of course, actually, like so many things, it's not actually the ideas that count, it's the execution. It's about how you go about sharing things, about how you go about crafting things. So getting involved with the wider writer community, finding people to read your work and just keep working at it is definitely really important.
And when you first did that and you shared some of your, this is for both of you, when you shared your work with other people, were you a bit concerned about the criticism that might come back?
If you find a good writers group, actually the art of giving decent criticism is something that you have to work on. Everybody has to work on it. But Birmingham Writers Group is, I believe it's the oldest writing group in Birmingham, and it's a lovely crowd of people. So I never felt exposed once I'd got the criticism. Obviously, the act of handing your work over for criticism is something different, but no, nobody was ever horrible. Everything is constructive, so you need to find yourself a crowd of people who will do that for you, not just obviously big you up because they're related to you or what have you. No. It has to be criticism, but constructive criticism.
No, I find the same. I'm a brewer. I'm an amateur brewer, and you give your best friends, a couple of you. Oh, it's great, lovely, and you sort of say to them, well, can you just tell me a bit about the astringency, the colour? And you go through these things and, well, I like it, and, well, thank you, but I'd like to know more about it.
Yeah.
But I've got one or two friends who will be very, very critical. And Bob, it's too bitter, or, it's too sweet, or I don't like it. And that's the way you learn, isn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's something as well to be said, certainly more so once you become a published author and you go about the job of being an author, is being nice is a very underrated quality. Being nice and playing well with others. I can't remember which writer said it. I'd like to say it was Neil Gaiman, but I think it was probably somebody else actually, who said, there's three things. You need to be good at your job. You need to be on time delivering your work, and you need to be nice. And you can get away with two of them, but not, only having one of them. That actually being nice and being cooperative and welcoming to others is a really valued quality in any kind of creative activity.
Actually, that work ethic thing, because we haven't spoken about this, the reason why our partnership has endured so well is because we both have a similar work ethic. I can imagine, trying to write something with other people. If they didn't share the same approach, the same professionalism, the same amount of time they're prepared to put in, it wouldn't work. And
you would never get it delivered, would you?
That's right. And above all other things, I think that has made our partnership endure.
Yeah.
And you're both obviously family people.
Mm-hmm.
How do your families react to your second careers?
Perhaps we should mention spouse meal.
We kind of made a rod for our own backs with that, perhaps, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
That after we finished our first novel together, we took our respective other halves, so my wife, Heidi's husband, we all went out for a meal together, and it's become a sort of like a tradition now, that almost like as an apology for spending so much time with other people, with writers, that every time we finish a book, we've promised to take them out for a slap-up meal of their choice. But obviously, as the number of books we've written has gone up, and with the speed at which we turn them out has become quicker, we've kind of fallen behind, I think, to a degree, haven't we, Heidi?
That depends if Ian, if Simon and Amanda are listening.
Yeah.
Obviously, no, we're completely up to date.
Yeah.
So it could be one really big splash up meal.
Well, yes, that's true. I mean, sometimes it does feel that, like when we go out for these meals out, our other halves try and drink all the profits. But no, I think because writing, obviously, which has been wonderfully kind to us, but writing has the advantage of being a wonderfully cheap hobby. So actually, it keeps us out of trouble and well behaved and doesn't cost the earth. So that's quite
just a few new typewriter ribbons every so
often. That's exactly it. Yes, it's not a lot. It's a laptop and a place to think. That's all you need.
So you mentioned the novellas this year. What other current up and coming projects have you got that you'd like to tell listeners about?
So
if you've got them.
Oh, we definitely do.
Yes.
We are finishing the other series that we haven't really spoken about, Odd Jobs.
Yeah.
Odd Jobs.
Yeah, so we started a series, I think it's about 4 years ago, called Odd Jobs, in which follows the work of a government department that has to deal with all the horrors and monsters and alien creatures that threaten our world. And in that sense, it sounds a bit like Men in Black sort of thing. We actually was taking our kind of I suppose our inspiration from the kind of cosmic horror of the sort of H.P. Lovecraft novels, and what would we do if horrible things with tentacles were going to reach out from the worlds below and try? Because we wrote a series of novels, the Odd Jobs books, about the government department based in Birmingham. We like Birmingham, and how they have to deal with the day-to-day goings on of creatures that basically want to destroy our world. And as Heidi was saying there, it's the fifth book, isn't it? We're currently finishing off. The fifth book in the series, which may very well feature the end of the world as we know it, which seems to be the wrong kind of topic to be writing about right now. But there we go.
And that's coming out this year?
That's next year, coming out in February 2021, yes. But at the same time, we're working on another project, which I think, is very close to Heidi's heart.
Yes, so we already mentioned that we burn to emulate the Florida whack job crime novel type of thing that Carl Hyacin writes. And so we have written, we're just finishing off a trilogy of crime novels. And because we wanted to make them a bit like those Florida crime novels but set in the UK, we have decided that Skegness is our Florida. So Skegness. So we got a crime trilogy set in Skegness, a comedy crime trilogy.
Are these novellas or full-length novels?
Full-length novels.
Yeah. You've been very busy by the sound of it over the last few years.
Oh yes,
we have. Yes, I think this year with the re-release of a book, The Woman in the $1 Million Dress. I think that was our 20th novel together. So we have been busy, and we've enjoyed it very much.
So roughly one book or two books a year.
That's kind of the speed we got up to. And I think with that, I was talking about that collaborative writing. Although two people, you'd expect to work twice as fast as one person, I think two people working together do work faster than two people working separately. We have been very fortunate with the rate at which we've been able to produce the books that we've wanted to write. So that's been...
One last question on the writing. What happens when one of you is very concerned about something that they want to put in the book and the other perhaps not so keen? How does that work? But I suppose what I'm trying to say is, do you ever get conflict in views about how you want something to go?
It happens, but perhaps less than you might imagine. We have adopted, as a main rule, we've adopted the same one that I think Ben Elton and Richard Curtis used, where if somebody strikes a thing out of a piece of writing, the other person is not allowed to put it back in.
Oh, right.
Now, we've mostly stuck to that.
I broke that last week, didn't I? I broke that rule last week.
You did.
Yeah, that's the first time in 10 years I put something back in, not to actually have it back in the novel, but kind of went, here is a hole and something needs to fill it. But yes, we get on ridiculously well. We probably don't fall out as much as people should do, really. But we do have the thing, because obviously Heidi mentioned what we bring to the books, and there is the element that sometimes I might look at something Heidi's bringing to a book and I kind of go, right, that's too stupid for words, okay? A Yeti on a tricycle riding through the scene. Why? What's going on here? I don't understand. And I might try and talk Heidi down from that. At the same way, Heidi quite rightly points out something and kind of go, that's too clever for its own good. It's smug. It's self-satisfied. And, and we learn to recognize that we can spot each other's flaws to a degree.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you've got a very good partnership going there on that. So where can people find out more about your work?
If they wanted to properly keep on top of what we're doing, they might go to pigeonparkpress.com, which is our website, and sign up for our newsletter. If you wanted to dip in a little bit more informally, then we have a Facebook group, actually, which we try not to shout about our own work too much. It's called the Comedy Kitchen, and that's a place where we discuss other people's comedy novels more than we discuss our own, because we just love anything funny and share jokes and things like that.
Yeah,
I'll put all those details in the show notes so people can make contact with you and have a look and see what you're doing.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's been great having you. Was there anything else you wanted to say or tell listeners before we wrap up?
I'm going to say that as a no. We've really enjoyed talking to you, actually. It's always good to just, not just to hear the sound of our own voices, but actually to reflect on what we've done and why we do it and how we do it. And it's always nice to have a chat about this, very much so.
Thanks very much for coming on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
You have been listening to Undercurrent Stories. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share the show link to your friends and family, and if you have 60 seconds, I will be most grateful if you would please rate and review. To hear more episodes, please subscribe to the show and visit undercurrentstories.com. If you leave your email in the link, we will notify you as soon as new episodes are released. Also, check out our social media links, details of which can be found on the show notes. Until next time, this is Bob Wells wishing you all the very best.